This is the Mind Body Detox Podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom for how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back, everyone, to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Mind Body Medium, Kara Lovehart, and we're continuing our Energy Mastery series here, and we're talking about the Sacral Center today. So if you haven't listened to the past episodes, we covered first the heart center, our place of our true divine essence. We are being, just who we be, I should say. We moved into the solar plexus at that next episode, and we talked about our divine doing, coming from that place of doing what we're here to do. And then we talked about the throat center last time, which was about expressing that aspect of ourselves authentically. And I love to explain the chakras from this perspective and the energy centers from this perspective, because like I said, the first episode, the heart center is our center. It is our divine essence. Love is really the unifying field for all things. And that's why I think that heart center is a beautiful place and a beautiful starting point as we unfold and go through the energy centers together. Now, when we talked about the throat center, I want us to, before we move into the sacral center, to think about when we're a child, right? And we're developing and we're just this big, bright, shining light. Babies are big bundles of joy. They're just love incarnate. And then when we're trying to learn how to express our needs and this divine doing, we have an action we grab for the bottle, we grab for our mother. We have these things that are just innate actions of just, I'm here to be in my presence and I'm doing these actions because it's what I need to do without ego, right? We're responding without ego, this divine doing of our nature. And then we move into expression, right? We have this initial expression of crying, of calling out, of learning how to emote through sound, through our voice. And we don't know what that means when we're a child. We're just expressing, right? We're either whining or laughing or cooing or whatever we're doing. And it's just this innate expression of our authentic self. Now, as we grow and we learn, we start to then see that we are a separate entity from our parents. This is where separation anxiety starts to come into play. And that's why a lot of times many of us, when we're children, get a stuffed animal or something to take place of that parental figure to create this thing we can be attached to in the interim until we develop fully our energy field to be in a separate space. If we, of course, develop in a healthy environment that we can create a healthy detachment from our parents. But in the meantime, we develop this awareness of other, the person or things around us, right? We start to understand as we develop that there are things separate from us, especially people. It does include objects. There's this thing called object permanence, where you can maybe take a ball and cover it up with like a pot or a pan or something, and then take the ball away or cover it up, and then the baby may think it's not there and it's gone away forever, right? Until we understand that it's like still there, we just can't see it, right? There is this sense of, where did it go? Oh my gosh. And we have such attachment to the things around us because we don't really know that we are in us, that we are a separate entity, an ego identity. We just are experiencing the world from this input mode. Everything is in our environment, light, sounds, everything, we're just inputting. And we start to then, over time, see that there is a separation between us and others. We have to learn to play with others, communicate with others, understand that something that's not ours or something that we have that's a toy, we are sharing that. So in this unfolding of our energy understanding, we go from this innate authentic expression of ourselves, right, to understanding that we can express authentically from the heart, hopefully, as we learn and grow to be balanced, right? We express to others to create an interaction, a back and forth flow. So that word flow is a key word here for the sacral energy center because it is about flow. It is ruled by the water element. This is where emotion comes from. And emotions drive a lot of our expression. So what's very fascinating here is we'll talk about thinking about how the energy field also develops from a neurological perspective. So what I love is embryologically, if we think about when we were in fetal position, like the embryonic development. So the throat center, the throat chakra, we talked about that last week, which is the pharynx, and the sacral area, which is the pelvic region, they originate from a common group of cells in the neural crest. So when you were in utero, before you separated into that fetal where you have the head and you have your feet and it's separated, those two regions were one in the same. And these cells develop into various systems. So these include the parts of the nervous system, the pharynx, and the reproductive organs. So they were one and the same. The vagus nerve also connects the brainstem to the rest of the body, and it plays a very significant role in the throat region. That's why humming can activate the vagus nerve for downregulating the system, and the pelvic regions. So the connection between the throat center and the sacral center, as we unfold from this fetal position into this upright human being, they are still one and the same. And what's fascinating is we talk about the colors. We're talking about color theory here, that orange is generally the color associated with the sacral center. Orange, if you think about that color, it's light, it's playful, it's fun, it's vibrant, right? It is the embodiment of, psychologically for most of us, if it's not associated with some negative experience, the orange color, it's usually a general, universal color that relates to connection, to fun, to play, stimulation, and just the sensual nature of flow. And that is where generally the orange color is associated with that chakra color. But blue, on the other hand, which is associated with the throat center, is a complementary color to orange. So it's interesting that these two colors were one and the same. Just like when light comes down through the sun, right, for the sky, it is white or clear or whatever. And it's not till that light is passing through a prism that it breaks into its color spectrum. And so and think about this, I'm so nerding out on all this stuff because obviously you can't tell already, I'm very passionate about this topic, right? The development of the energy field. And of course, in energy mastery, we learned about where does it get distorted and how does that affect our manifestation in our world and our life and our realities, right? And of course, our physical health, right? So orange and blue, complementary colors. The throat center and the sacral center once were one embryologically, even from the nervous system development. So as we develop our throat center, we also talked about that it governs communication, self-expression, and truth. The sacral center is associated with creativity, sensuality, and emotional flow. And these energies are really intertwined because creativity and sensuality often will then need to be expressed, right? We need to have voice, art, movement, and we need to have these connections between these two flowing together in complementary colors, orange and blue, so that they are expressing themselves fully. And we talked about what happens when we don't fully express ourselves, when we push it down, when we repress. That's when we start to see issues and imbalances in this energy center of the sacral center. So when I work with people that have imbalances, we have a lot of different symptoms that can come up. But we want to think about the concept in general of flow, back and forth interaction with the concept of other. Other meaning an object, other could be money. That's why money is associated with the sacral center. It's associated with root center as well. We'll talk about that later, but that's more the structure and function of money. This is actually the flow where our relationship, our emotional relationship with money, our emotional relationship with others, our emotional relationship with objects. If we are attached to objects and we hoard things, we don't want to let them go. It is this rigid connection or flow and allowing things to go back and forth in our back and forth interaction, flow between us and us, other person, us, other object or circumstances. So when we have a disruption in that flow, whether it's from maybe abandonment, betrayal, rejection, loss, whatever it is when it comes to the emotional component of creating this expression of not feeling contented, that is when we start to see distortions in the sacral center. Now, when we have loss, sadness, depression, grief, heartbreak, that's more the heart center, and that still is emotion. But the energy center for sacral is more of the holding on to loss, betrayal, grief, abandonment, issues in relationships, fighting, things that could come up through this, like the solar plexus as well, where we have anger, frustrations we hold on to. But then it starts to pull all of these emotions unexpressed, and that just get either too big, where we're always expressing emotions. There's too much drama, too much water. Since I talk about the water element, water is associated with emotions. So there's too much of that sacral energy, or it's repressed and shut down. There's not enough. And these also are associated with sex and sexuality, because sexuality is the innate primal expression of me in relationship to other in a very intimate, sensual way, because the sensual nature of life is also connected to this center. It is fun, it is play, it is connecting with the five senses, it's dance, it's movement, it's sex, it's food, it's joy. And especially in connection, relationship with other, whether it's you dancing by yourself, enjoying the relationship to other music, or you creating art and relationship to other, your pencil, your pen, your paintbrush on the canvas, or you in relationship in a sexual nature with someone, or in a friendship with someone, or a relationship with a spouse, or even a parent. It is this back and forth flow we have. Now, when we're feeling a sense of discontentment in this area, whether it's in the concept of relationship with other, and we're not able to express it through our voice, through our throat, to get it out, maybe even thinking about it and listening to ourselves to figure out where this discontentment is coming from, we can feel disconnected, alone, lonely. We can feel a sense of needing to fill a void within ourselves. And if we don't have that void filled, we could fill it with addictions of any nature. So the sacral center is usually something I see wildly out of proportion or shut down in people when they have expressions or symptoms of addiction behavior or addictive types behavior in their life. So it could be alcohol, it could be heavy drugs, but let's even think of smaller things such as needing a substance to maintain a sense of satisfaction. Not, hey, I want to have a piece of cake every once in a while, but like I need caffeine, I need sugar, I need some sort of stimulant, I need to shop, I need, even when people have pornography addictions, even addictions to drama, having this need to have this excitement in their journey, in their life, and creating unconsciously or consciously drama in the world, in your reality. Versus maybe a healthy outlet for that would be watching soap operas, right? Or having some sort of if you really are that person that gets a rise and love out of the excitement of drama, there's nothing wrong with it, right? It's more so when it turns up in a way that's destructive to our life, it starts to create these issues in the sacral center. Now let's talk about the sacral center is of course associated and oriented in our pelvic area. So associated with the pelvic region, the sexual organs, the bladder, the hips, the sacrum, the whole lower back area. And in general, when we have imbalances, we can see any particular physical symptoms start to maybe creep up in these areas. So even if you have issues with creativity, in over expression of your creativity, or you're unable to birth an idea. Now, this doesn't matter if you're female and have female organs to physically birth a child, but the idea of birthing an idea, making it come to fruition, making it have its physical form and it's completed, that can be something that can be a block in the sacral center. If we have the inability to have emotional balance, or we don't know how to have emotional regulation within ourselves, those are, of course, things we learn over time, right? Think about the child that's learned to express itself and is starting to see other, right? And learning to share, and in going through the frustrations and the emotional turmoil of, I don't want to share my toys, and being attached to a toy or an outcome or a person, right? These are sacral center processing. The terrible twos are more the solar plexus, the frustration and this and that, but we still have this intertwining with our development psychologically of letting go of things, of how do we interact, how do we share, how do we get along with others, how do we express ourselves. And of course, this learning goes on and on throughout our entire lifetime, right? It's not something that we're just done. We are still learning. So also, one of the things that's also associated with this center is the kidneys, because of the water element. And I do also lump the kidneys into the solar plexus as well, more so the adrenal glands that sit on top of the kidneys, because that's where we have our cortisol that gets pushed out, where we're trying to push ourselves and create more energy. But kidneys and the flow of the water, releasing, letting things go, especially in relationships, can be associated with this. I find it very fascinating when I meet individuals who have a lot of unresolved relationship stressors. And specifically, if they have feelings of being ticked off, or we even use the expression pissed off, I find it interesting that they tend to have a little bit more occurrences of UTIs, bladder infections. And I think it's interesting because that's the area which potentially would be inflamed from a mind-body perspective. It's just an interesting correlation that I find very curious. And also, we want to think about emotional balance. The hips the pelvic region is what holds and encases our, not only as women, our uterus and our area to create and give birth to life, to create, but also the emotional balance that's associated with this sacral center. The hips are what create balance for most of our entire body. Now, it starts, of course, from the feet up. If you have, a dropped arch on one of your feet, it's going to potentially create an entire structure the whole way up to your knees. One knee may be more locked, and then it creates this imbalance in the hips or the iliums, which are the hip bones. And that can create imbalances muscularly for the entire body, creating low back pain, hip pain. You may have one of your feet more rotated externally or outward and have more lower glute pain, or piriformis issues. And these are things that may not be something you would associate with the sacral center. It could be still something that is a repetitive movement, a way you do your job, the way you sit at your chair. But there are some unconscious things that also I noticed in personality types that have excess or repressed sacral energy and how they carry their body. So when we have this excess in sacral energy, we sometimes, if someone's very, very flowy, their individual personalities are a dancer, they like to move, they're very sexual in their expression. So think about this excess of sacral. These tend to be people who are performers, artists. They have a lot of creative energy. And if that creative energy is in excess and not being expressed in a healthy way, and it's maybe they're utilizing substances or they have addictive behaviors, or they're just not able to balance that center with the other centers in their body, there tends to be more of a dropping of the sacral or the lower abdomen area. It's almost like they're pushing out their sacral energy. Just like I explained in the body types of the solar plexus energy, this sort of excess protuberance of the stomach area right above around the navel area, almost if someone's trying to overexpress and push out that solar plexus energy to make things happen, to force it, to be in control, right? With this one, it's not necessarily to be in control, but it's actually more to be in flow, because there's maybe a dislike of authority or structures or rigidity. There could be too much flow. Like, yeah, I'm not fun with, or someone having an issue with authority figures. So they tend to be the flowy people that are never on time and don't have the ability to follow rules, or they don't like following rules, right? And so when you see an overexpression of that, we can see a dumping of that sacral energy, the way that the hips and the iliums are torqued. And I can see in just the body expression, there is a lot more fluidity to the hips, which is great, especially if you're a dancer, right? But it's always about balance. It's about, are we having too much rigidity here in the physical body, the physical form, and in the energy structures, or too much fluidity in the structures in the form? So in a balanced nature, we want to see this ability to emotionally express yourself, to be able to create and manifest what it is you're looking to create in this world, be able to have pleasure and feel contentment in the pleasures you experience, whether those pleasures are sexual or 5 sense in nature, just a sensual pleasure of enjoying food, not just eating to eat, but enjoying the food, enjoying the textures, enjoying the clothing you're wearing, colors, vibrancy. The other thing I think that's really important is if you're looking to create a balance in the center, the key to this space is unapologetically in your heart space led, having fun, playing, and creating in a space of no time. This is embracing the physical and non-physical, energetic and sensual pleasures of the world. This is where we lose sense of our quote unquote desires, right? We just are being in that space and feeling and loving it. Everything is just vibrant and we're experiencing that. Think about the color orange, right? Again, that vibrant color. We are then in a space of contentment, which is in a space of presence. But it may be a little bit more of a heightened space of presence because we could have a heart-centered, compassionate, still, calm presence. Or we could have a little bit more vibrant, pumped up, fun, energetic, joyful presence. And of course, combining those two together is great. But that is the key to creating balance in this energy center from a mental perspective. Now, if we are working with the imbalances that can happen, like this could be bladder infections, UTIs, sacral issues, low back pain, hip pain, hormone imbalances, right? And any chronic issue around that area. And if those physical issues then are not resolved, it starts to get more rigid, more solidified in. And it's harder then when it's a physical issue to utilize methods such as mindset, maybe more spiritual-based healing methods, holistic tools, and even diet and exercise or movement or even body work to release rigidity in the tissues and the energy field because it has maybe created a tumor, some sort of growth, some sort of distortion in the cells or the cell's energy field itself, so that they have created a, cancer cells in the extreme. And that of course can be genetic factors too. There's so many factors to this. So just to be clear, I'm not here to say that everything energetically is potentially why you have a distortion in your field and it's all thought, because there are things that are passed down to us epigenetically, and those things are whole another topic that I can nerd out about on another day. So for me as a mind body medium, when I am in the presence of someone's energy field and I kind of pick up their song, so to speak, and it's interesting because if there's a solidified physical structure that's become manifest, that's distorted, some sort of issue, we call it a disease, we have these symptoms that we label as some sort of diagnosis, right? And when we have those, that actually is almost like a particular chord in that song that's playing on a record loop. Like it's just going to stay there. It's rigid, it's set. And sometimes we can't change that with the mind body perspective or mind body approaches. And that's where medicine. So we do natural first, medication second, and surgery last. Like that is my method at least. And sometimes surgery needs to come in emergency situations, like appendix need to be removed, right? But in the circumstances when the energy is distorted for a long period of time and your musical song is changed and solidified, it is really hard to change that particular energetic field without changing or removing the organ, the initial chord that's very loud in your song that's continuing to create this ripple effect in your whole energy field. It's creating, like I said, a broken record on repeat, on repeat, on repeat. Also, I wanted to share a little bit more about some tools that we can work with this particular energy center. So one thing is working with unresolved shame, especially around shame around things that we are ingesting in nature, addictions. That can be a shame feeds addictions. It really does. If someone's going through a recovery program and there's shame around it, they're shamed by their family, it just is a repeating cycle. It creates and perpetuates that cycle, especially for sacral related imbalances, if that's the root of where their addictions are coming from. Any, of course, hormone imbalances that need to be addressed through diet, anything that needs to be redressed through organ removal or other things that they can work with. Exercise can be supportive for that. Sugar and alcohol can disrupt hormones, so that can also affect sexual health. Emotional overwhelm, learning emotional regulation techniques, looking at the root cause of any depression or lack of pleasure in your life, or the inability to create or express your creativity if it's blocked, or if you have this overexpression of it, and maybe you have a lot of ideas and it's very scattered and it comes out in all the places, but it never actually comes into fruition. Maybe you have a huge book of ideas, but it's really hard for you to get any one of them to fully get created, or you start the project and you don't finish it. So that can be an issue there too. If you have the inability to play or be flexible, maybe you're too rigid with things. It's hard for you to let go of people or items. Joy and play in the nature of balancing this energy center, of course, boosts serotonin levels. It improves our emotional health and resilience. And the emotional flexibility versus rigidity helps with our creativity and helps with our stress response. Of course, there are many different types of practices that I talk about in our Mind Body Detox program to support it. But I think releasing shame, working on addictions, and working on finding contentment through play and joy and expressing your creativity are the main things that I always say when there's a sacral imbalance. Also, I wanted to share the practices of humming, singing, chanting, expressing. Even though those are throat and throat chakra based things, that humming is also very connected in with our expression of pleasure. When we eat something delicious, and if we're really vocal and able to let that sacral energy come out, we might ooh or ah or that's so good. The expression with our voice of how we're feeling and letting that come out. So vocal toning, singing. This is why singing and song can be a really cathartic experience, especially for people who are shut down in the sacral energy centers. I have friends in my life that are opposite. Instead of they're dropping their sacral energy in the physical structure of how they hold their body, they hold their sacral energy in, and they're really tight in their hips and low back and rigid. And there's almost like a protective shield around that sacral energy. And they don't really express or emote. They are not the best at that. Some of these people I know in my life. And when they get out their emotions, it's through a cathartic experience of singing or expression of some sort when it comes to art. And so it's okay if you're not someone that's very expressive or vocal in verbalizing your thoughts or emotions. You maybe not be a journaler, right? But if you can express it through art, maybe you don't have words to put to your emotion, you can express it through song, through chanting, through singing. That is very helpful in moving that energy and getting it stirred up to be released. And that's, again, where that throat center and the sacral center from the Chinese folded man, that fetal embryonic origination, those are still connected, and they're communicating back and forth still through the vagus nerve, through that humming. And it's just a really beautiful, beautiful thing. Also, if you have trauma, sexual trauma of any sort, that is really important to get worked with a therapist of some sort, someone you feel safe with, because that can be something that can manifest, of course, up in relationships, and that feeling safe to express that energy sexually. The only other thing I would share is that this center, I think, is something that I'm concerned about in our culture with its imbalance in the long term. I'm concerned with fertility issues. I'm concerned with our ability to create. Of course, with AI, we have the possibility to use that tool to help us create further, or to then offload our potential creativity and have AI create everything for us. So it depends on how you're using the tool, if you do use AI in your life. I'm concerned a little bit with our depression, our state of our mental health, of course, at large with our culture and worldwide, and discontentment, always needing to have things, our quick, fast-paced culture of used to get it now yesterday, and now we want something now, new, other, the next thing. There's this continual feeding or needing to feed more experiences, and we're continually feeling a perpetual state of discontentment. And it's not creating a safe space for sacral energy to flow. We don't have the ability to express our emotions. Sometimes that over-emotional state is seen as bad, or that you should control your emotions, or because of the excessive expression of uncontrollable emotions, when we have issues that are just emotional dysregulation, we're not able to do it. There's shame around that. we've been shamed for crying in a place we quote unquote shouldn't have cried, or expressed anger, or whatever it is. It's this need to find healthy outlets. And our culture is I feel like our culture is afraid of the power of our creativity, the power of our emotion, the power of vulnerability, the power of expression, the power of sexuality. We have this block in this area that I'm concerned about, the fertility issues, like physiological issues that manifest over time. And of course, this is a very complex topic, right? Issues in our water, toxicity issues that are wreaking havoc on the organs of reproduction for our whole entire planet. That's affecting our ability to make more life. And not only making life human forms of making babies, but also just creating in general. We have, a lot of us are consuming content, but where are we creating in our lives? Are we someone that just consumes the creative content of all the other creators out there, or movies we watch, or books we read? It's fine to do that, but do we have an outlet for creating ourselves? And it may not look like painting or singing. It may look like decorating your house, or it may look like your creative efforts is organizing. That's a creative aspect too. It doesn't always have to look like what we think creativity is. But I'm concerned with our creativity being hijacked. I'm concerned with humanity's impotence and issues with sexual expression. I'm concerned with the nature in which sex is also being expressed out in these spaces for young children and young adults to have this distortion of what sexuality looks like. So I just think in general, we have a lot of distortions in this area. And I would love to see healthy sexual expression, healthy emotional expression, healthy play, our ability to express ourselves, our ability to have contentment and joy in experiencing the five senses and the pleasures of life, and the ability to have relationships that can be a back and forth, us and the other, and ability to communicate those expressions to the loved ones around us, and work with not having to hold on to betrayals and resentments and these things that disconnect us, and do this othering, us over there, us versus them stuff. That's more into the physicality, root chakra, which we'll talk about soon when we have this warring of people and different tribes, right? That's a little bit more of that particular essence and archetype of the energy centers. But I still am concerned. And I also have great hope. I have great hope for this information and all the information for the amazing creators out there that are continuing to make content and inform people about the nature of their multidimensional self, the nature of the energy field, and connecting it to the mind and body, especially for those out there that still are a little bit not understanding how it connects to the physical reality and looking at this as if it's just a woo-woo topic, because there is, in my experience of this work, knowing as a medium the things that I have experienced and seen and could not have known, and of course me being very science loving and science based, going, how the heck do I know that? How is it that way? And studying and wanting to find research to support what I experience. And every day I find new things. Something recently I learned, and I'm going to of course get some more details on this to share with you guys, specific hormones that we can smell from the olfactory nerve that we can pick up in an environment after a group or a certain person has been in that environment, that are very subliminal, that we can pick up another way, that we can prove that empathy or empathic abilities exist. Because it's not just us feeling the energy and the emotion or picking up body language, right? There is actual hormones and neurochemical, or hormones and biochemical signals that we're receiving on some capacity. And I just think for me, as I reverse engineer all of the information that I have as a mind body medium to try to figure out with my fun, loving research scientific friends, how can we explain and give the references to understand how this stuff is so important. And it comes down to energy, it comes down to biophotons and light as a form of communication between what is that we cannot see and how it manifests in the physical form, and how when we understand these things and we can relate to them and we can learn with them and have self-awareness, we can then use these tools and awareness of how the nature of this reality works to create our own or recreate our own reality and co-create it together for a better world. And of course, and that's what I'm here for. Speaking of creativity, here to help create and help us manifest and learn how to do so. Because I think that That's one of my big passions. How do we learn to create and create in a conscious way? So this awareness series with the Mind Body Mastery will continue next week, and we'll talk about the third eye chakra. So again, thank you guys so much for listening, and be well until next time, my friends. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. If you love this podcast, share it with others and leave us a review. Your reviews help us more than you know and supports us continuing to make episodes and being heard from all over the world. You can also follow the link in our show notes to submit a topic that you would like to hear on the show.